All right. Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's event. As everyone gets logged in and situated, feel free to take a look around at the top of your bar. You'll be able to react to slides with the react emoticon up there. You can ask questions in the Q&A chat message bubble, and otherwise we'll give it about 3 more minutes for people to join, get situated, figure out where they're at, look at their calendars. I know meetings sometimes go over that hour mark, so we'll give everyone a few more minutes and then we'll hit the ground running on this webinar. But I appreciate everybody's time for hopping on. For those who just joined, we'll give it 1 more minute and then we'll get started on this webinar. I appreciate everyone's time. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you all for taking an hour out of your day. I know we've got a lot going on, but I appreciate you taking some time to just learn more about coffee insights and some cool technologies coming from Dalla Corte here. This is a webinar about really elevating your coffee program using key industry trends and also looking at technology innovations that can really drive home what you're trying to do with your own business and how you're matching those consumer demands. I'll be your host today, your presenter. My name is Gage Johnston. I am the marketing manager for Dalla Corte North America. I've been doing coffee for 14 years. I've done a lot in coffee. I've done multi-unit retail management. I've helped build roasters. I've helped businesses really exceed in their coffee programs by adapting new technologies or developing new products, all of those fun things, and in each segment. So whether it's a convenience store, whether it's a really special cafe, whether it's part of the third wave crowd, right? This upper echelon of coffee, I've probably been a part of some program. Here specifically, I really drive our own innovation through insight. So as a really well-developed and well scalable business, you want to be driving new growth with consumer insight. And so that's what I help apply to the Dalla Corte brand here in North America. And I also understand how the technology that we need translates to that consumer demand. So that's what I'm hoping to put on you today for your own business. If not today, hopefully in the future. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about that. A little look at our agenda. We'll take a high-level view at the coffee landscape. So what trends are shaping the industry? What are some of those consumer behaviors? And then looking at some cool innovations in equipment specifically for Dalla Corte. Then we'll talk about craft and automation. It's a really hot button topic. We all hear those news stories about AI. We see automation, we see the robots in the field, but how do we bridge that craft and that automation? And how do we stay smart about it? So what smart strategies can we use when we're bridging that automation and that craft? Finally, we'll look at some operational tips. So what do I need to do operationally to really optimize my environment to take on new technology or to scale or to grow my business, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think a lot of us just want to do better with our business. And hopefully some of these tips help you get there. And if not, we can personalize some of this information to get you along a little bit further. At the end, we'll have a Q&A. Any questions you have, feel free to pop them in that Q&A chat. I'll have our wonderful moderator, Brandon. He'll take a look at those questions at the end, and then we'll go through them and answer them one-on-one. So anytime you get a question, feel free to just pop it in that chat, and we'll take a look at it at the end of the webinar. We also have some cool resources and exclusive offers at the end. So talk a little bit more about that, but there is a giveaway at the end. So hang on, there'll be a form to scan at the end of this webinar. It'll go pretty quick. We have a lot of information, but hang on till the end and you'll get to scan that QR code for a chance to win a little bit of Dalla Corte merch. So let's jump right in. First, we're going to start off with key trends among coffee consumers, right? If I'm doing my business successfully, I'm looking at what my audience really wants, what their expectations are, and hopefully matching my business to my audience's expectations, right? I can sometimes apply my own stuff. I can sometimes apply a little bit of flair from my own branding, but at the end of the day, I want to follow along with what people are really trying to do and what they're expecting when they go away from home and buy a coffee. So let's start with a little bit of a financial outlook. This may or may not shock you, but for consumers right now who are purchasing food and beverages away from home, the 73% of them say they're getting by. So when I look at my finances, you know, 3/4 of Americans are generally okay with just getting by on what they're doing now. In fact, fewer people in this June survey said they were falling behind than in January. So even with this tariff conversation, a survey of 11,000 people shows that actually fewer of them are falling behind in their finances. Now, when we look at that bottom graph, those future budget expectations, 2% more people feel like their economic situation is going to worsen, but still a large majority find that, hey, my budget expectations are probably going to remain the same. That's that 59% there. So we know people are doing what they normally do. You can see by these lines on this graph that there's been no real change even with some of those new administrative policies, even with some of this tariff talk, nothing's really jumping out yet. It certainly things could happen in the future that change that, but right now, just overall with trends, we're seeing some consumer activity of just holding on and doing what they normally do. So that's what we're looking at when we see away from home spending. Now, for consumption and coffee, this is really cool, right? So in the past day, 66% of Americans have had at least one cup of coffee. And in the last week, 73% of Americans had coffee. 66% is the highest it's been in decades. This survey from the National Coffee Association started in 1954. Since then, it's gone in waves, different time periods, more people like coffee, but since about 1973, this is the highest past day consumption we've ever been at and the highest weekly consumption we've ever been at. If you look in the middle of that bar graph there, you'll see espresso-based beverages. those are getting a lot of traction in the last few years, but among younger consumers too, which we'll look at in a few more slides. So focusing on those espresso-based beverages and not so much on that traditional coffee is really going to set you apart when you're developing a coffee program. So we want to be focused on espresso-based beverages. We want to be focused on specialty coffee, and we want to be targeting those consumers, right? Because coffee is really high value right now. People want it. People aren't afraid to spend more money on it. So we're in the right industry if you're in coffee. You want to be focused on really optimizing your coffee program. When we look at a venue visitation generation breakout, we see who's more inclined to go to specific segments. So looking at the left there, fast food, actually Gen Z and millennials and even Gen X, they're all pretty high with past 3 month fast food consumption. So this is visiting that location at least once within the last 3 months. So a lot of people, that's 85% of Gen X, have been to a fast food location at least once in the last 3 months. For Gen Z though, we're seeing some really cool trends. So we're seeing C-store activity. They're the highest people who have gone to a C-store, the highest number cohort that have gone to a C-store at 43% there in the middle. So how are you optimizing coffee toward different venues, and how are you really attracting new customers, and how are you gearing it towards some of those different preferences for consumers, right? So if Gen Z like espresso-based beverages, well, maybe we need to meet that demand in venues where traditionally that demand hasn't been met. So we want to look at those fast casual locations where 69% of millennials are targeting right now, which is a really high penetration for fast casual. Or maybe we look at the coffee shop, right? Geared toward younger consumers, not so much the boomer generation. So getting away with more traditional coffees, more traditional brews, and leaning into some more of those customized espresso-based beverages in these key venues is going to be a really strong practice for our coffee program. When we look at consumer needs, right, this is what do I want when I go to my location? Okay, 34% said quality, right? I just want a good quality coffee beverage. I'm spending my hard-earned money. It's likely the only coffee beverage I'm going to get that day, so I want it to be high quality. I also want it to be convenient, which we'll look at it in a few more slides about how we get to that convenience. But 31% say, hey, when I buy my coffee away from home, I want it to be convenient. And then 28% said they focus on the price. The price is actually falling down further and further. Price is not really top of mind when a consumer is going into any sort of venue. They're looking for quality, they're looking for convenience, and they're looking to customize and maybe even have a loyalty program. So they want to be a part of that brand. They want to get some cool deals. They want to be involved in that drink and in that process when they purchase that one beverage that they're going away from home to get. When we talk about loyalty programs, we usually often bring up the need for value and combo deals. So let's take a quick look at what does value mean in different segments for consumers, right? So if I have a bakery or coffee shop, you see on the bottom right there, 62% of customers are actually looking to use some sort of coupon or promotion to get their coffee. They want that. They want that promotional deal. They want that coupon. They want some sort of deal that's going to get them to that value in their own minds. In mid-scale locations in those venues, ordering a combo. So is it all put together? Is it the number 5 on the menu board, right? So how am I doing combos in mid-scale? And then in back to our bakery coffee shop, right? Buying off of a value menu. So how are we showing value on our menu boards? How are we talking about value? How are we saying that, hey, we have something here that is lower cost, maybe drives a bit more purchasing and increases that ticket size just by offering some sort of combo or value meal in a bakery, in a mid-scale location, in a fast casual, right? If I'm looking at something where it's Chipotle or one of those fast casual locations where I order at the bar, how am I using those promotional coupons and deals to really capture my core audience? Looking at consumer need states, right? What do I really want in the back of my head? Not necessarily when I go to purchase something, but this is what I think about when I want to go purchase something. Okay, I'm going to try a new coffee location. I'm really doing it to try out a new drink as a coffee consumer. So 45% of people said, hey, I just want to try out a new drink, and that's why I'm going out and buying more coffee. 41% said they wanted to try more premium beverages, right? So we have variety, our new drinks. We have premiumization, our 41%, just wanting to try something a little bit more high quality. And then visiting new locations, right? So testing out a new coffee shop. We've seen this year especially, there's a pretty big dip in brand loyalty. Really about what's high quality, what's convenient, what's closest to me, and how do I get that? It's not so much about that brand loyalty anymore. They just are looking for a really good experience and some variety and some premium options when they go out to get their coffee beverage. You'll also see some other things there. Social media influence, content creators have a huge drive right now on people purchasing coffee away from home, joining a loyalty program, more disposable income, right? 31% of Americans said they just had more disposable income to go increase their coffee consumption. So we know the opportunity is there. There's no hesitancy from the American consumer to go buy their coffee. So we want to match those demands as much as we can. When we look at coffee drinking motivators, this is really big for me because I like understanding what are they thinking when they go buy that coffee beverage, right? What am I ultimately trying to match in my head with drinking that coffee? So for hot specialty coffee, it's just simply to wake up or start my day. I want the energy. I want to be awake and alert. So I'm going to go buy that hot specialty coffee beverage. But if I go all the way down on that little chart there, I'll also see I want it to taste really good. So I need the taste to be there. It's not simply getting energy in the morning anymore. 43% are saying they want the taste to match the energizing hot specialty coffee. For cold coffee, same thing. I'm doing it for the taste. Cold coffee is a little bit different though, because it's not for the energy. It's more as an indulgent treat. So I'm willing to spend a little bit more money. I'm willing to go out of my way if it tastes good for that iced coffee beverage. So how can I really customize these iced coffee beverages? Can I add more stuff in them? Can I market them toward a unique audience? Can I create something that's visually captivating? How do I make it look more refreshing and more like a treat rather than something that's just a part of the routine and a part of the habit? That's what I want to be focusing on when I'm doing iced coffees in my coffee program. So just someone to look at the motivators there. Now, looking at that convenience, we're focused on tech savvy consumers, right? We've got Gen Z and millennials who are spending all the money right now. So how are we meeting their demands? How are we capturing their attention? How are we getting their coffee beverage to them? Past day usage of drive-throughs in out-of-home coffee buyers, if you look at that chart on the bottom there, in January, it was 56% of coffee consumers used a drive-through in the past day. So they really want to have a drive-through for their coffee. Is your coffee program matching that? Is your location matching that? Are you making it easy for that convenience? When we look at if it's going to increase over the next year on the graph on the right side there, yeah, we're seeing an increase. 65% of them said we're going to stay the same with our frequency, with our drive-through frequency. But another 20% said, hey, we're going to increase it in the next year. So we want to make sure we're matching those demands, right? How are we being convenient? How are we looking at convenience from our own coffee program? It doesn't necessarily have to be a drive-through. It could be a drive up. It could be a delivery. But how are we matching those convenience demands with a coffee program? It's sometimes more difficult said than done, especially if you have a really craft and customized coffee program. Now, key purchase drivers in high quality. This is probably one of my favorite research insights I've ever pulled. If I'm asking a coffee consumer what defines high quality, 78% of them said consistent beverage standard. 76% of them said staff attentiveness, and 69% actually said the water filtration. So how's the water at the coffee shop? These are just consumers. These aren't cafe owners. These aren't anybody else. They are concerned about the water filtration. If you look all the way down at the end of that bar graph, you'll see latte art. 34% think it's important, 30% think it's unimportant. they could take it or leave it. They're more worried about the consistency of the beverage standard and the staff attentiveness, right? How is the staff treating me when I go to a location and spend $7, $8, $9 on a single beverage? I better be getting that treatment from the staff, and I'm expecting that treatment from the staff. And if I don't get that, I'm not afraid to never come back and retry. So I want to make sure I'm meeting those demands of those consumers and getting them into the door, keeping them, retaining them, and having them be a part of that entire life cycle of the company. So I'm really concerned with those top three things: my consistent beverage standard, my staff attentiveness, and my water filtration. Okay, those are just a little look at the consumer demands. Let's dive into some of the technologies that maybe help match demands from Dalla Corte. So let's take a look at some innovation in equipment and how you may be able to apply it to your business. So why equipment matters? Well, we need consistency, we need efficiency, and we need quality control. Those are the three big things for a growing and scaling business, right? We want to make money, we want to keep growing. So here's how we're going to do it. One, matching those consumer demands with those three, but two, through our key technologies. So let's go into a little bit of a spotlight here of our technologies. Here at Dalla Corte, we have some really great espresso machines. Most importantly, the biggest feature on our espresso machines is this multi-boiler system. Now, you may have heard of independent group boilers and multi-boiler systems. Did you know that Dalla Corte is the very first to have ever commercialized independent boiler systems? Pretty cool fact. Paolo and Bruno Dalla Corte invented this back in 2001 and commercialized it and patented it. So it's a pretty cool technology, but it allows for that consistency of the beverage standard. So temperature stability, right? Is my recipe the same every time? Can I set my temperature different on each group head to match different recipes? I can also disable group heads on my Dalla Corte machines so that if one group head fails, I can still work on the other two or three on the machine without having any downtime. And then my recovery time, right? If I'm waiting forever to make a coffee beverage, if it's taking too long, my customers don't want that. They want the convenience. So I need the speed of that heating element. I need the speed and the efficiency of the coffee machine to really get those beverages out that the customers want. Next, we are one of the only commercialized espresso machines to have 54 millimeter portafilters. Now, you may be asking, what's a 54 millimeter portafilter? Well, it's our brew basket for our traditional espresso machine. Most in the industry are 58 millimeters. So when we shrink it down and increase the depth of the basket, we actually get longer contact time with the coffee and the water. We get a little bit of a lower pressure just due to some hydraulic physics there. And we also get an improved flavor. There's lots of research out on this. There's a few YouTube videos too. So feel free to explore why 54 millimeter portafilters actually increase that beverage quality, right? If somebody wants convenience and quality, and they're willing to pay for those two things over price, we better have the quality of that beverage down, and then we can charge pretty much anything for that coffee beverage. Finally, our last little highlight here is our flow control. So in our Zero machines, in our Barista and our Classic, there's the capability of adjusting the water pressure. So not necessarily pump pressure, but actual water pressure going over to the coffee and matching that through the entire profile of that espresso recipe. So soft infusion, flavor profiling, repeatable recipes, and manual and fixed modes. I can do all these things with that Zero Barista and really truly dial in the highest quality version of that espresso that I can to make the best drink I can get out to the customer. I'm focused on that. I really want it to be repeatable too. So I know that I can program this technology across all the group heads, across the Zero machines, and make sure that that recipe is being the same for every single shot that's going out the door. So my digital flow profiling is really cool. Very similar if you're familiar with pressure profiling, but just playing around with the actual flow of the water rather than the pressure of the pump coming into the machine. So some cool technology there. When we put it all together, we actually see, right, we want to do some things with this. We get a faster workflow, we get some waste reduction, and we potentially get a return on our investment, right? If we're investing in a innovative equipment, new technology, we probably want some return. We want to increase sales, we want to increase throughput, we want increased ticket sizes and basket sizes. So how can I leverage this technology to do those things, right? If my bar flow is streamlined, I'm getting that throughput. I'm putting customers in their convenient mindsets through the line a lot faster than traditionally they have been doing. So we're getting that convenience factor. Smart waste control, right? I'm controlling the cost. We saw the tariff for Brazil. We know coffees from Brazil are going to start costing 50% more. So how are we controlling that waste? Well, we're using crime control system, which we'll talk about. We're using milk control. We're using auto steam to make sure we're hitting that temperature each time so we don't have to throw away or waste milk. We're getting that consistency through repeatable recipes and programming and the stability of that temperature in those portafilters. So we're getting some of that ROI through waste reduction, through more tickets, through more customers, and really showing our audiences that we're high quality, right? I need convenience and I need quality. I'm going to keep saying those things over and over because those two things are driving growth in coffee programs. So I want to be quick and I want to be high quality. I need those two things to really be optimized. Now, you may ask, well, if you're Gage, if you're talking about repeatable recipes, if you're talking about milk steaming, if you're talking about grind control, right? Automated technologies. How do I bridge the craft and automation? It's a question in all of our minds right now. How do we use automation, even using AI, but keep some of that creativity? So let's go through this. We're going to optimize, we're not going to compromise. Let's start with blending craft and automation. So we want to empower our staff. We want to empower our baristas to really be creative with automation. Automation, all it's there for is to take out the repetitive tasks. I tell people often, we're not using AI so much for the artwork, for the music writing, for the latte art, for all these things. We're using it for the repetitive tasks, right? Do I have to keep pulling a shot over and over? Do I have to steam my milk and understand that temperature to an exact precision, precise metric? Do I have to do my laundry over and over, right? What are those repetitive tasks that I can optimize and support my creativity by taking those off of my plate? So I'm really focused on balancing that automation and that creativity so that I can be more effective. I can have more stellar staff paying attention to those customers, right? We saw 76% of consumers just want staff attentiveness. That's a big portion of our audience as coffee consumers. So we want to make sure our staff are freed up from the monotonous tasks, the laborious things, the repetitive functions, so that they can spend more time taking care of the customer and flexing that creativity in whatever they do, like cool latte art or like new signature beverages where variety is driving consumers. So we're taking those repetitive tasks off the plate. Now, we can do it in hybridized ways, right? We don't have to go fully automated. We don't have to look at systems that are all robots. We don't have to make that investment. We can take one little thing here and there and just apply some automation to it. So in our grinder here, we have something called the grinder control system. That's simply hooking up the grinder to my machine to make minor adjustments throughout the day to maintain my recipe. So, right, I'm not automating the grinder. I'm not automating the shot pulling. I'm just automating the little recipe, dialing in the settings that keep my coffee tasting the best it can without me needing to focus on that and less on dealing with a customer or going out and doing table touches, right? Checking in on my customers that are in my cafe or in my venue. I get more time to spend with those customers through some of these automated features. Scaling, right? We want to be able to scale our businesses. So how am I doing that with consistent recipes that I can match between machines and take those to all of my units, right? Say I have 100 cafes. What am I doing to really make those recipes repeatable and not rely so much on some of that human error that has the potential to drop that quality and that consistency and reduce that staff of attentiveness, right? Those are all my things my customers want. So why would I be implementing technology that hinders those things? I want to implement technology that really promotes staff attentiveness, quality, consistency, and maintaining my recipes, my consistent beverage standard across all of my fleet. Now, a little reflective question, just as we go through this and you think about different things. What are some components of your current setup that you could really automate? What are those repetitive tasks that are taking time and focus off of a customer, off of creativity, off of making a new product, adding variety? What are some of those steps that you could really automate? It may not necessarily be the espresso machine. It may be a cleaning function. It may be stocking and inventory. What are some of those things you could apply a little bit of automation to without totally turning into a robotic cafe? So just something to think about as we go through this. Okay, our last little bit here, we're going to talk about some really cool things. We're going to discuss tips and tricks of future-proofing your cafe, right? We want to set ourselves up for success. We want our businesses to grow, and we want to leverage some of this automation and this innovation and our consumer insights to really beef up what our cafes are doing. So let's start with labor. Labor is tough. Turnover is high in the food service industry. We're having a tough time just paying people and retaining them. There's no brand loyalty. Employees don't want to stick around for that long. They want to move on to bigger and better things. So how can we really leverage what we've learned so far to empower our staff and keep them on for a longer time? So simplifying that training curve, right? If my barista program is 3 to 4 weeks, I've invested way too much money in an employee that chances are they may not be the perfect fit, or they may not be in the right mindset to be my long-term employee. So I've spent all this capital training my employee on something that I know the turnover is probably going to exist and I can't really beat it down that much. So I want to make sure I'm looking at, hey, are my training procedures really optimized? And so I can do that with some of this technology, right? Milk steaming. I don't have to train a barista how to understand what temperature it is in the milk pitcher when I'm frothing milk. I can have some automation in that steam wand. Or dialing in an espresso. I can set the grinder up to do that as a cafe owner, as a lead barista, as a shop manager, as an attendant at a grocery store. I can set those things up, and then the employee is just responsible for making sure that that technology is just doing what it needs to do. I can also build confidence and empowerment through this consistency and this retention, right? If I open up my staff to their creative abilities through automation, I'm automating those repetitive tasks. Automatically, I get more buy-in from the staff. They get to create new beverages. They get to engage with their local communities. They get to test out new products with their customers that are in the store. They get to touch tables and really connect with their core audience, right? Imagine I have a cafe that's maybe one here, one there. It's on the West Coast, it's on the East Coast. I've got cafes around. How am I allowing those employees to really engage with their community and get their buy-in and have that retention if I'm having them do all of these repetitive tasks that really could be optimized and automated to free them up for those things? So I want to make sure I'm empowering my employees and my staff through these automated technologies. So train and retain, but do it smart, right? Focus on what's important, what's critical for your core audience, and leverage that with your employees. Get their buy-in and get their support for what you're trying to do. Next, we have menu engineering. This is a big one because it's often fraught with, maybe some extraneous development, some R&D that never quite works out, or it's wasted ingredients that didn't really lead to much. So when I'm doing my menu, when I'm really engineering, I'm looking to consumers, to my core audience, to develop the next thing. I'm not leaning on what maybe I like, or maybe that one TikTok post that I saw late last night at midnight as I'm doom scrolling, right? I maybe saw a really cool drink. It might not work for my setting. It might not work for my core audience, right? Who is spending the most money? Who is engaging the most with my brand? And how do I really target an innovative product for my menu that captures what they want? What's going to drive more business with my core audience? So maybe if I'm dealing with Gen Z and millennial coffee consumers, right? Globally inspired ingredients are trending with them and really popular with them. So am I leveraging that when I'm developing my menu? Am I looking at a specific generation in my area, in my core audience when I'm developing those items? Am I simplifying all of these processes, right? If I'm developing a recipe that's too complex, It takes too long to train. It takes too much capital to get it implemented across the entire fleet. So I want to make sure I'm developing recipes or menu items or products that are really easy to scale and build up from. I don't want something complicated that's going to require a lot of labor or a lot of extra repetitive tasks. I want to make sure I'm developing the menu in a smart way and thinking about that pipeline between R&D and getting it actually sold to one of my core audience customers. So engineer for that profit, for that speed, for that scalability. That's what we want to see. Next, we look at the 4 pillars. So here is the 4 P's of really scaling and growing your program. This can be implemented into any venue, into any product, into any business strategy. We can use these 4 pillars to really understand what's going on. So, first question I'm going to ask is, how are you empowering your people? How am I developing, implementing tools, recipes, training that are empowering my staff to really guide and lead the brand, right? Your staff are dealing with the customers, with your core audience. Likely you're not dealing with that audience as much as they are. So how are you empowering them to really be the best shepherds of your brand and of your product and deliver on that high quality and that convenience and that variety to your consumers without you being there? So think about how you're empowering your own people. Next is the process, right? Have you refined your process? Is it still stuff everywhere, stuff scattered, ideas all over the place, a lack of pipelines for innovation, right? If I'm developing a product from R&D all the way to launch, is that process in place? Do I have my SOPs, right? My standard operating procedures in place to really help the staff flourish in that environment? If nothing is written down, if there's no steps and processes, I've got a lot of other complications before I can allow my staff to start flourishing and really take care of those customers. Next is planning. Am I doing my best with planning? And especially planning for growth, right? If I'm building 5 more stores or 5 more units or acquiring maybe a larger business, am I really planning that appropriately with what I have now and how I can scale that? So looking at optimizing inventory, scaling those operations, forecasting your demand, and really getting involved with your business on that level of data and planning to grow it, to optimize it, to really run it as efficiently as possible. And all this can be done with any type of coffee business. So we can look more into that. Finally, our performance, right? How am I tracking and measuring performance? Am I just throwing an LTO out there, a limited time offer, and at the end of summer, I say, good, sounds great, we did a good job, now let's move on to fall? What am I looking at for data and understanding how those products are performing among my core audience? Am I using consumer surveys? Am I getting case studies? Am I looking at what's selling the most? Am I looking at my inventory turnover? How am I understanding performance? It could be items and it could even be staff. How is my staff performing and how am I tracking that performance among my staff too, to let them flourish, to give them more rewards for what they're doing, right? If my staff are driving in a bunch of consumers and more sales and increased ticket sizes, how am I rewarding them? How am I tracking and looking at that performance and really evaluating those metrics to grow my business successfully and effectively? So the 4 pillars here are essential for building a good quality coffee program. Finally, we have a couple operational tips. So workflow optimization, we want to get that workflow down. We don't want this to be too complicated, right? If we have turnover, if we have risk of sacrificing quality and convenience, I need to be as quick and efficient as possible to maintain that high quality, that variety, that customization, that premiumization. So I want to make sure my workflow is totally optimized. So you'll see my first point there, using the barista triangle. A study done by A&T Design actually looked at dozens of coffee shops and their structure and their throughput and found that there's actually a formula for a really optimized coffee bar flow. So as an example, if my espresso machine is my focal point, if that's where I want the attraction to be, my grinder is going to be to the left or to the right at about 1.618 times the width of the coffee machine's footprint. So I'm going to put that distance between the machine and the grinder. Same thing for my service area. if my grinder's on the left, I'm going to go to the right and I'm going to put my service area there. So I'm going to understand the length and the dimensions of my coffee shop to maximize how many steps my baristas actually need and what that throughput actually looks like for consumers. So I can use that golden ratio to understand what my workflow actually looks like. Next, how are things laid out, right? Do I go from coffee storage to the grinder, to the scale, to the espresso machine, to the serving area? Does this mirror your consumers' preferred movement, right? If I've got consumers in a demographic who maybe don't want to move that much or maybe are okay standing in a line, might make something a bit more static and a bit more vertical. If I have consumers who are very active and in a high traffic environment, I may have a longer bar where I can allow customers to walk down and get more beverages or spread out certain functions so that people don't start packing in with each other and getting upset about the service and the flow of them just trying to get coffee. So I want to optimize my workflow as much as possible. Finally, some maintenance tips here. Staff checklists are essential. Implement them, use them, look at the performance, and track those metrics. I recommend doing it digitally too. It makes life so much easier for tracking and planning and looking at the performance. So get digital task lists that break out all those tasks that you might otherwise automate, but keep them in a really centralized and really efficient way so that your employees can do them much quicker and have easier access to performing them at the best of their abilities. If everything's scattered, if things are on paper, if things change day to day, it creates a really rough environment to train and retain. So we want to make sure that those checklists, those simple things are automated with digital technologies. Next is water filtration. I can't stress this enough. 99% of coffee beverages can be water, right? I can only have 1% of coffee in my cup. That's a real possibility. So I want to make sure my water is high quality. Also, if you look at my little statistic there, it's been calculated that companies can save up to 66% or 60% of their equipment maintenance costs. So just something as simple as installing a water filter for my coffee equipment is really going to prolong the life of my coffee equipment so it doesn't break down that often, but also improve the beverage quality, right? I need that quality for that consumer, for that new coffee consumer. And then finally, protecting my investment, scheduling preventative maintenance, tech visits, replacing things that need to be replaced, really expanding the life cycle of that machine is going to do wonders for your operation and for the scale, right? If I can partner with a local service provider to really handle all of my espresso machine breakdowns, my downtime, I really optimize that part of the function because it's going to happen. It happens for every machine. Things just naturally wear and tear over time. So how am I optimizing my downtime to make sure I'm maximizing my uptime, right? I want to have that coffee machine always on. So I'm protecting my quality here through checklists, through water filtration, and finally through protecting that investment. At the end, we have some key takeaways, right? Bridge the gap. Look for ways in your coffee program right now that you can bridge between craft and automation. What little steps can you take to really let your employees or let that business flourish to the best of its ability? Install smart technologies. Have those things where you can plan and track performance, right? Install digital task lists, put repetitive recipes through your espresso machine through using digital technology. This helps you scale with that confidence, right? If I get everything the way I need it, the optimized way, I can really scale that business and grow because ultimately that's what I want to do is grow my business. I want to be more successful. I get to pay for better coffee. I get to hire more people. I get to benefit the economy when I can scale with that confidence and then add that operational success in afterwards, right? Look at ways you can streamline and optimize those operational factors like cleaning, like maintenance, like water filtration. What are those things that you're missing that we can really look at and optimize down the road? And with that, all I have left is some room for questions. If we had any questions in the chat, Brandon, feel free to let me know what's going on. Y'all stick around too because we have presentation access guide and then a little giveaway. So we'll take a moment here for the questions if we have any.
Hey Gage, yeah, I do have a question.
Sure.
How could automation support creativity rather than replace it in a coffee program?
Yeah, I think I spoke a little bit about this, but really I think we often get scared of the word automation or AI or longer termed out artificial intelligence, right? It's going to replace us. It's going to do all the things that we're trying to do. I don't know how frequently you all have dealt with automation and artificial intelligence, but it really is still just software. It's still just a computer, right? We have our creative brains, we have these ideas in our heads, and we can really support those ideas through getting those repetitive tasks off our plates. If I'm constantly worried about maintaining a checklist, if I'm constantly worried about maybe counting something or weighing something out, right? Weighing my beans out or weighing out different things or counting inventory when I could be scanning it. How can I use that computational and automated technology to take those mundane tasks off my plate? I get extra time to free up for that creativity. I get extra time to develop a new beverage, to practice my latte art, to do something different, go out to the customer and say hi and talk to them and engage where a computer otherwise can't do those things. So I really can take those repetitive tasks off my plate. That's a great question. Okay,
Looks like we have another question. How
sure.
frequently should I be innovating or developing recipes to meet LTOs?
So I would recommend a standard program of about 4 cycles per year. You can set those timelines. They're different among everybody. I know if anybody's familiar with the pumpkin spice latte, material was just shipped to the locations to start making those PSLs. So you could start as early as you want. I would recommend uh, first of all, deciding what you want to do, what's going to be most successful for your audience, but then two, setting timelines around those innovations. So start with four, start with developing 2 drinks for your winter season, develop 2 drinks for your spring season, maybe launch a couple things for summer, and then look at what fall has to offer. The seasons are really great litmus tests for LTOs, and then branch out after that, right? If I'm in New England, I'm probably going to do something more, or even Chicago, geared more towards St. Patrick's Day. Whereas if I'm West Coast, Southern California, I'm probably not going to do much for St. Patrick's Day. It's not necessarily my core audience's focus. So I'm going to look at my regional demographic. I'm going to look at my core customer and find what those innovations could be and really try to strategize those first and then set timelines around them. But I'd recommend starting with the seasons, going with those, developing 2 drinks, testing those out in your market, and really tracking the performance to get you started. Okay, no other questions. Let's do the fun part. So, next steps, we will have access to today's presentation sent to you. A lot of cool data. I know you all want the statistics. Those are really sweet. We take our time getting the best statistics of coffee consumers, so you'll be able to use those. So we'll send those to your email. We'll have a PDF of the key takeaways too. You'll also receive that. Here's some contact information, and definitely give us a follow on LinkedIn and YouTube if you haven't done so already. We appreciate the support. I'm always trying to put out new content, new videos, new education, and new insights. So look out for more fun activities coming down the road. And then our final slide here, contact us. So this is really cool. We've got a giveaway going on and a consultation. So if you scan that QR code or click the link once you have this presentation in your email, you can fill out a Microsoft form. One, you'll get entered into a random raffle giveaway. We have some really cool Dalla Corte swag. But two, I'll send a link for you to schedule a consultation on whatever topic you like. We go through market trends and coffee consumers. We can look at your business specifically, see how to optimize those functions. We could take a look at whatever you'd like to take a look. We've got 30 minutes to do it, and we can just have fun taking a view of where automation can help you or where traditional espresso technology can take you. So we're really excited about this. feel free to scan that QR code and fill it out. Again, if you don't have the ability to scan that QR code, we'll send this out in another link. I'll give a minute here for everybody to scan that. But that submission form will close this Friday at 11:59 p.m. So make sure to fill that out, and then we'll be in touch with the giveaway winner and the consultation, which we're really excited about. And if there's any other questions, we've got a minute, so feel free to pop it in that Q&A chat and I can answer it while I'm here. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to hop off if you scan this code. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to many more with y'all. So thank you for spending a nice little 50-some minutes with me. I appreciate it. Okay, I think everyone may have scanned it. Getting hearts. Thank you all. Anybody left on, you can always message me questions if you have them. Otherwise, have a great week. I appreciate it.
Okay, Gage, I'm hitting the button.